and I will hand into your capable hands, Mike. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Liz, and how exciting to be here to celebrate a 50th anniversary. I mean, it is incredible, isn't it, to think that we actually have, as a trust and an organisation, been going actually for more like 60, let's be honest. We were actually born in about 1962. But obviously, as a single trust, we've actually been going for 50 years. And, you know, looking back over that time, I mean, I would definitely recommend, I can see Angus there on the screen, he wrote a fantastic little summary of the last 50 years in the latest Row book. And it's a really enjoyable read. Even his skits on Yorkshireman, I'm happy to pass that by as well. It's a really great read. And you can obviously find out much more about the actual history. But the thing I wanted to reflect on was, you know, who was there right at the start? Well, obviously Angus and Ian Armstrong and some people who are not with us anymore, Tony Tynan, who led the trust in its early days. Many we could actually mention. There are two founding members with us actually on the call tonight, Mike and Liz Smith, and it's just fantastic when we actually make contact with those grassroots people who actually started the whole of what we are doing now. And the other thing I reflect on is that actually things haven't changed very much. You know, we're going to talk tonight and you'll see lots of little videos about all the wonderful things we're on with, but a lot of them really go right back to the start, because in 1971, actually, we had all the same concerns about the environment as we do now. They've just, in a sense, got worse and more urgent, in fact, in terms of how we address them. But some things have got better. You know, the levels of pollution we had on our rivers at those times, the effective development, wiping out sites without any protection at that time, no Wildlife and Countryside Act, nothing like that. There was a real urgent need then for the trust to be born, and thank goodness it actually came about. And in the last 50 years, we at least have held back the worst that could happen. And now we've got to take things even forward. So we're not self-congratulatory here. We're not saying, wow, well, haven't we done a fantastic job? Yeah, we have. We've done a great job in many ways, but there's so much more to do. But I wouldn't want to let us go into this without mentioning big wins that we've had along the way, like the Border Myers projects. You know, incredible. The biggest peatland restoration in the UK. Absolutely amazing. We started red squirrels. We brought otters back into England after they'd actually disappeared from all the waterways in England. And, you know, they are not small things. The other thing is we engage many people. You know, we've got thousands of members, and we could not have done anything for the environment and nature like we have without all you supporters and all the members, volunteers of the trust. Our lifeblood from the start to now and into the future is volunteers and people who just give time because they care and they're passionate about nature. So all of you, I know, are all there on this call, and there's many more behind you. But that's our army for the future to actually fight this war against nature, which unfortunately the human impact is causing. So I don't want to say very much more than that, because we've got a lot to get through, and it'll be more entertaining, I think, to really see what comes up in the videos. Perhaps I just will say a little thing in that the clips that are coming are many and varied, and I'm not casting any aspersions anywhere when I say that we're not professional filmmakers, all of us. Actually, one of our trustees is, and I think she might give us a bit of training, all of us, in how we can get the message across even more. But you will see people today and tonight talking about their absolute experience in the moment of all the projects we're delivering. And, you know, there's nothing better than that. You'll hear it right from the ground roots, if you like. And in these times, it's the best we can do without taking you there. So with no further ado, I think we can start now with the first 25 minutes of recorded videos, which take us through everything from Benshaw Moor, which has been a massive thing in the last couple of years, obviously, Reedsdale, ospreys, waterfalls, well, I'll let you listen and see. So have an enjoying watch of the following videos.
So as we approach our 50th year at Northumberland Wildlife Trust, I think I sort of remember back 25 years of that when I was a volunteer here, and you know, it's interesting to think back over some of the projects that we've had in that time. My first big project that I got involved with was on the Border Mires, and that was starting to do some damming work and some restoration on the Border Mires. That actually started way back in 1971 when the first damming was done by hand on Haining Head moss. Over my time at volunteering, we were still doing damming on the Border Mires using plywood sheets at that time, and then I say the first project I really got my teeth into at Northumberland Wildlife Trust was a European funded project, which was really the first one that started seeing proper partnerships with Forestry England, as is now, Natural England, and a number of other partners as well, where we did an awful lot of work in removing trees, damming ditches, and starting to really have an impact on restoration of some of the Border Mire sites. And interesting, that's continued. We've continued working with those partners and others to do an awful lot more on those reserves as well. Other things at the time, we also started 20 odd years ago to start acquiring some of our bigger reserves, and that was a step change. So we moved on from perhaps a lot of the smaller stuff that we had before to sites like Whiteley, 1,500 hectares, 3,500 acres, and indeed East Chevington, which was, rather than just being the sort of leftover bit of an open cast restoration that was left over for wildlife, we actually got the whole section there with farmland, woodland, as well as the wetlands on that site as well. So I suppose that's where we started doing this bigger areas for wildlife, and started thinking on a different scale and that sort of thing. One of my first challenges, I suppose, when I started working properly on this sort of more state side of the Wildlife Trust was foot and mouth year, when everything stopped for foot and mouth disease in the countryside. We weren't able to access most of our countryside sites. We had to change access on some of the others, and it really lost us nearly an entire summer of work across our reserves. And I suppose you could relate that now to this past 12 months, where we've had obviously the COVID crisis and the delays and the changes that's caused us. Actually, strangely enough, we've actually lost less time this time than previously, because we've been able to continue at a lower level, but we've been able to continue quite a lot of our work. So challenges like this come along periodically, and they do throw you out of kilter and make things put things in perspective, I suppose. But hopefully we get out of these and we're bigger and better and stronger to be able to move forward for the next 50 years ahead. Again, one of the early projects I was involved with, albeit peripherally, is the Otter project, North Northumberland Otter project. A big sort of riparian project to try and sort out some of our problems with our rivers, particularly in the north of the county, and to try and make those habitats better for otters. At the time, very few otters were in Northumberland, but over those 20 odd years, then they're pretty much on every river catchment in the area, and even small streams across the county. So it's been a really good success, and we're still doing species stuff. So we're now working on perhaps the next most important, or the current most important mammal, declined hugely. That's the water vole. So a lot of work going on at Kielder for that. So there are species projects like that. We also get involved, obviously, with habitat projects, not just on our own sites, but across the wider area as well. So things like Magnificent Meadows is a memorable project that did an awful lot of work in terms of our wind grassland and some of our other species-rich grassland sites across the county. So these things all help to get us involved and to get other people involved in nature conservation across Northumberland. And of course, we're always looking for the future, and always looking for new projects to come in on that sort of thing. So Benshaw Moor is one of our recent acquisitions. It's a nice large area, 250 hectares, 600 acres of upland near Elsdon. One of those projects I feel pleased about, because I've seen it right the way through from first view right the way through the purchase into what we're doing there now. So what we're trying to find out on the site is what we've got and understand the habitat and understand the wildlife up there, so to help guide us into the future and how we want to manage it into the future. And I think this is where we're also looking elsewhere for other potential acquisitions, other opportunities that might come up, so that over the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years we'll be starting to see, you know, bigger areas and bigger projects to perhaps more radical projects. Let's see where it takes us and what we're able to do. But the future obviously is quite exciting. We have opportunities out there and we're always looking to find out what else there is available to do. Of course, work on a wildlife trust is not just about wildlife. A lot of what we do is those projects I've mentioned, but you know, we've got sites like Hawksley and Northumberland, which are great wildlife sites, but also really important for people and engaging people and getting people involved and interested in wildlife. So Hawksley, you know, 4 years ago we were building the building there. We've got a fantastic centre there now, which is really popular, much more popular than we ever envisaged. Of course, it's been closed for the last year, but hopefully we'll reopen again soon and be as popular as ever. Hawksley is a fantastic site for wildlife. Lots of interest there from butterflies and birds, wildflowers as well. Northumberland's a bit different. On the face of it, maybe not as good for wildlife, but remember we do have all 5 species of Northumberland amphibian on the site, as well as quite a nice mix of wildflowers, insects, and bird life there too. So actually it's not a bad site for wildlife as a whole, but it's a fantastic opportunity to get people involved and linked with wildlife and nature by getting a whole different audience onto the site, enjoying the open space and hopefully picking up some of the wildlife interest while they're there. Of course, the work we do is not just about our site management and our sort of public facing side of it. A lot of stuff is behind the scenes, so work on planning, for example, our sort of comments on planning applications. You know, limited time for that sort of thing, but we do try and do our best to comment on some of the major applications, and hopefully some of our comments have an impact and an influence on what the decision ultimately ends up being. As well as that, we manage the local wildlife site system, so that's about looking for the best bits of land that aren't already designated within Northumberland, and sort of designating them and at least having some recognition of them as an entity. And on top of that, we do quite a lot of advisory work, you know, talking to people about their land management, advising them on making it better for wildlife, as well as, you know, undertaking surveys, often on our own land, but also in local wildlife sites, to try and understand more about what we have there and across the county. So that's a quick run through some of the projects, but I think I'll leave that to the officers and those involved in those projects to tell you a bit more themselves about what they're up to on a whole range of different things that we're doing as a trust.
Hi, my name's Sophie and I'm the project officer for Catch My Drift. Catch My Drift is based on the East Chevington Nature Reserve on Druridge Bay, and it's focusing on redeveloping our habitats, and as well as doing that we are looking at restoring our hides. The whole idea is to improve visitor experience as well as our wildlife. Chloe and Joel, who are coming up next, will talk a bit more about the history and the valuable habitats we have, but we are mainly focusing on our reed beds, our meadows and our woodlands. We are funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, but have also had the chance to work with the Co-op Community Farm, the Venti and Sisters Wind Farm Community Fund, as well as many more, along with kindful donations from everybody who's been involved, which we'd like to say a huge thank you to you all.
East Chevington Nature Reserve was originally an open cast drift mine, functioning from 1882 to 1962. During this time there was a village on the reserve for the miners and their families. The site was then an open cast coal mine from 1982 to 1994, and during this transition the villagers were relocated to nearby Hadston and Red Row. Following the closure of the mine, an open cast restoration project formed the nature reserve that we know today. The history of the site is emotive for local people and those that used to live on the reserve, and there's a strong connection between the local community and the mining heritage of the site. So as part of the Catch My Drift project, we're aiming to draw on the heritage of East Chevington during the rejuvenation of the reserve.
We are lucky on East Chevington to have a wide range of habitats on the nature reserve. Each of the different habitats supports locally and nationally important populations of different species. For example, our reed beds are the largest in Northumberland and support the county's only pair of breeding marsh harriers. Throughout the summer, our wildflower meadows are alive with butterflies, bees and other insects. Our wet woodlands are very valuable for wildlife, with species such as marsh marigold, meadow sweet and a range of mosses at ground level. These Scots pine trees are an excellent habitat for red squirrels, siskins and crossbills.
Hi, I'm Natasha. I work for the Revitalising Reedsdale Landscape Partnership. We work all across the Reedsdale Valley. We're from the Reedsdale and Elsdon to the south, all the way up to the Scottish border. I'm here at Smootle Ford along the River Reed, so it forms part of our major river restoration work. Specifically Smootle Ford, we've reinstated the historical crossing here.
Our partners at Tyne Rivers Trust have also planted trees along the river here, and at other sites in Reedsdale, and other natural river features such as riffles have been restored at various points along the river.
I've also been involved with lots of peat restoration work within the Reedsdale Valley, especially at Whiteley Moor National Nature Reserve up near the Scottish border.
At Whiteley, we have installed coir logs into areas of eroded bare peat, which helps to reduce water flow across the peat bog and raises water levels. This will also prevent more peat erosion into the future and create the conditions needed for natural bog species to re-establish.
At Ellershaw Moss, we've also been removing self-seeded Sitka spruce, which we don't want on site because it reduces the water levels on site. Our peatland restoration work within Reedsdale is really important, especially for the water quality of the reed, because degradation of peat means that it silts up the water in the reed, and this means it's not in best condition, especially for our freshwater pearl mussels, which are important here because it's one of 2 habitats within the northeast of England, so we really do need to look after the river reeds.
Within Reedsdale, we've also been working with local communities on our grassland project to increase floral diversity of hay meadows and village green spaces. As an example, we've worked at Corslenside Church to train local volunteers the traditional skill of scything and hand baling to look after the meadows here.
Our partners at Northumberland National Park have also been heavily involved in removing the Reedsdale Ironworks from the Heritage at Risk Register, which is a great feat for the project. We've also been involved with restoring the High Rochester Bromenian Roman Fort. Throughout the catchment, I've personally been involved with improving lots of rights of way, specifically around the village hubs such as Otterburn and Elsdon.
As part of this walk and cycle project, we've improved infrastructure such as stiles and stream crossings, and we are working to improve waymarking on routes throughout Reedsdale. Northumberland Wildlife Trust is just one of 17 partners working within this landscape partnership project, which would not be possible without funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So thank you to all partners and volunteers that have helped the project achieve all we have so far.
If you think you'd be interested in any of the projects that I've spoken about today, please do get in touch via our website and keep in touch on social media.
I'm Katie Bark. I'm a Living Landscapes Project Manager at Northumberland Wildlife Trust, working in and around Killhead Water and Forest Park, managing a variety of different projects. Now, NWT have been involved at Killhead since the very early days of the Trust, working on restoration of the Border Myres, an internationally important habitat. I'm standing here at Bakethin Nature Reserve, which we manage in partnership with Northumbrian Water, and everything we do at Killhead is in partnership. Our other principal partners are Forestry England, Killhead Water and Forest Park Development Trust, Tyne Rivers Trust and Calvert Killhead, and together we're able to achieve a lot more than we could just by ourselves. Killhead is home to lots of famous species such as red squirrels, water voles, you might have heard about the pine martens that have recently made their way back here, and also the ospreys. In 2009 we had the first chicks hatched in Killhead for over 200 years, and we now have 7 nests in the forest. NWT run Osprey Watch every summer, and we're currently working on a new viewpoint and facility which we hope to be able to share with you soon. Kielder now attracts over 400,000 visitors a year, so it's really important that we advocate for the wildlife that's here and make sure that it's an integral part of the reason that people visit here. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues Kelly and Graham to tell you more about two of the projects that we work on here, Restoring Ratty and Killhead Wildwood.
Hi, my name's Kelly Hollings. I manage Restoring Ratty project with my colleague Graham Holyoke. Restoring Ratty has been in existence since 2016, 5-year project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We work with partners, we work with Forestry England and Tyne Rivers Trust, and we formed a great partnership between us. We share volunteers, we share resources. So the main aim behind Restoring Ratty is simply to reintroduce waterfowl back into Kielder. That is our strapline, and that is certainly what we've done over the years. Just under 2,000 waterfowls have been reintroduced so far. Yep, we're stood at one of our release sites. We're up at the Scat Ponds right here, and we released here in our very first year in 2016. We've learnt so much, honestly. As a project has evolved, we've learnt an awful lot about where waterfowls prefer to exist, the habitat that they require. They certainly break a few rules when it comes to Kielder. So we've now, when we select release sites rather than ponds and rivers, we now go for very skinny little ditches, which they really thrive in, possibly because of the vegetation overhang, because they haven't yet built their burrows. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. We've learnt lots along the way, and we are very well supported by our volunteers, which is almost, for me, one of the best parts of the project. Our volunteers help us with our surveys, they help us with our monitoring, they help us with country shows, with school visits. Yeah, we certainly couldn't do it without our volunteers, who have just started coming back after COVID, which is so great to welcome them back. So in order for Restoring Ratty to achieve its goal, we needed waterfoals to breed from. We needed like a captive stock so we could reintroduce waterfoals back into Kielder. Derek Gow was our contractor to do that. He's an expert in this field. He runs a breeding centre in Devon, and he helped us select areas where we could take waterfoals from, and they've gone down to Devon where he breeds them for us, and they come up to be released. We've taken waterfoals from the North Pennines, we've taken them from North York Moors, and we've taken them from Trossachs in Scotland as well, all under licence, and very few waterfoals were taken, probably 40 in the first year to form a captive breeding programme. Waterfoals under 160 grams were taken only, and only in October, so we knew that they were youngsters, they weren't breeding females, and they were very unlikely to last the winter. So that's how we selected waterfoals to take for our breeding project. And another part of the project is to work with schools, which has been fantastic. We've worked with just under 30 different schools, lots of local schools that have come out and helped us with releases and learned how to survey for waterfoals, some schools from inner city areas, and we had a 3-way partnership where we worked with schools that learned about the capturing of waterfoals, the breeding of waterfoals, and the release of waterfoals. And that was great because we got to work with schools in Devon and Yorkshire, and all those schools formed like a video where everybody could learn about the breeding process and the capturing process and the releasing process. So that was brilliant. Yeah, so this is one of our many mink rafts we have in the forest. There's roughly 80 of them. We use them as our main monitoring tool to monitor for mink. We're out twice a month. Mink are the biggest predator of waterfoals. They are from North America and are not native to England. Waterfoals are right at the bottom of the food chain and can escape and can deal with natural predation, but mink are small enough to enter their burrows and eradicate entire populations. So it's really important for our project to make sure that mink numbers are as low as they can be. So we check these mink rafts twice a month. I'm just going to do one now. So within the raft is a basket with oasis and a clay pad, and whatever walks through that tunnel, it's going to leave its footprints behind. And you can see some prints on this one. It's almost like it has performed for us. So we've got big juicy otter prints here, and then we've got the first water vole prints of the season, which is fantastic news. Water voles start being active from about April onwards, which is when they breed. You can see it's a bit of a mess, so I shall top it back up with clay, smooth it over so whatever else walks on it will be able to record it when we come back in a couple of weeks.
Hello, welcome to Killhead Wildwood. I'm Graham Holyoke, I'm the project coordinator for Wildwood project, which runs from 2018 till 2022. And the main aim of Wildwood is to recreate an upland pine woodland here at the very top end of Kielder. We are literally a couple of kilometres from the Scottish border, and going a bit further over, we're heading towards Whiteley as well, nature reserve. Just on the top of the hill is Killhead National Nature Reserve and SSI, so we're in quite an important and special part of Northumberland here. So the main aim is to reseed this hillside and create a seed source for going further into the future. We don't want to just stay at 95 hectares, we want to expand over towards the Scottish border and over to Whiteley, maybe looking at about 450 hectares in total. But this first phase of the project is to get that seed source, to get those trees back. So we are going to be planting about 35,000 trees of native species, including hazel, willow, Scots pine, as well as alder and quite a few other species like bird cherry, holly, a few juniper and a few hawthorn as well. So some of the other interesting features on this site are the Scots pines. So there's 3 groups of Scots pine, one at the Williamsclough burn and one on Scatburn and one on the Carry burn. These pines are believed to be the last remaining English native Scots pines, which haven't been planted and just come here and stayed here. So we are really keen to get the genetics from these Scots pines into the new planting. So the Scots pines that we're planting are going to be grafts from the original Scots pine. We tried other techniques like micropropagation, but that hasn't gone well, so grafting is the way we're going forward. There's another interesting feature is that a few years ago a beaver stick was found sticking out of a bank of one of the burns here. This is believed to be the most recent physical evidence of beaver in England, so 400 years later than any other physical evidence. So it shows that beavers were in this valley, and hopefully we can get them back one day. This project has been made possible through funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and we work in partnership with Forestry England, who own this land. And without these two and other organisations like Natural England, we really wouldn't be able to do this project.
Hi, I'm Natasha. I deal with the practical elements of the Wildwood project. To date, we've managed to plant 15,000 trees on site, and we plan to do 6,000 more this year, 4,000 of which will be done by contractors, but 2,000 will be done by our hardy volunteers that come out, rain or shine, to plant trees with us. It's not just about tree planting here at Wildwood. We've got an extensive ecological monitoring programme, from reptiles to birds, bryophytes and deer impact assessment. If anything lives here, we want to know about it. If you want to get involved, just get in touch.
Yeah. So just like to bring us back to now, but how inspiring was that? It's just so incredible to see all of those people in the trust just really working hard for nature, but also, of course, the people who you couldn't see, which are the volunteers and the big teams, of course, who are behind them and the funders. So it's a fantastic story. I guess the other thing is that we touched on all these things, but our visitor centres, establishing Hawksley and Northumberland were turning points for the trust. 200,000 people a year go through those centres in a normal year. And in fact, even in the last year, excuse me, the Northumberland has done extremely well, and more people than ever have gone through. And, we see a really bright future for those centres to get close to people. And also we're going to redevelop our education and our young people offer to get the next generation of nature lovers actually back involved with nature if they're not already, and many are. You'll actually hear from our new youth worker, Demi, in the next set of videos, and I think you'll see for yourself there the young energy that's coming into the trust to take even new initiatives forward. We're going to do nature connection like we've never done before, and also wild in new areas that we've not, on a bigger scale, even maybe than the Border Myers in the end. So lots of exciting stuff. We'll see some of that. Also purchasing Benshaw, a really big, fantastic nature reserve. It does everything. It keeps carbon in the ground. It creates wild space. It's an area which links to the whole of the Reedsdale catchment and Whiteley Moor. It's a really start of a really massive approach in that area. And Trey Anfield, who made a film about it, will be able to introduce that. And alongside that, we'll hear more about red squirrels, because we're still not job done with red squirrels. We're keeping them there in the landscape, but much more to do. And then Sheila Sharp, our head of marketing and fundraising, will talk a little bit about what else we're doing to engage people with nature, but also how we're planning to celebrate our 50th. And just about at the end there, Ian, one of our trustees, will give a little bit of geology to us as well, just to get us involved in that aspect of everything. I just, let's reflect on all of the things that were mentioned there. Just so many positive things happening across the trust. Of course, we're thinking about the history of the trust as well, but really the history's been made every day, isn't it? Every time anybody goes out there and releases a waterfall or does any work or plants a tree, it's the future which is developing. So this is the next 50 years taking form right in front of us. Very exciting. The next few videos will build on all of that, and you'll see even more. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but listen for birdsong, because I've heard at least 8 species in the last bunch of videos, and there must be more interesting ones on here as well. So over now to Trey and the Benshaw Film.
Hello there, I'm Trey, and as well as being a trustee of Northumberland Wildlife Trust, I'm also a photographer and a filmmaker. And as soon as I heard about Benshaw Moor, I knew that I wanted to document it in some way. And that's for a couple of reasons, really. The first being quite simply that Benshaw is just such a wonderful site. It's also one that might be quite underestimated. It'd certainly be easy to dismiss it on an overcast or windy day as a little bit bleak and exposed up there on the moors. But it's closer inspection that really, really gives you the value of Benshaw. It's full of a mosaic of little gems of habitats, and it really is quite a treasure trove of those. I don't want to steal Duncan and Alice's thunder by telling you too much about them in detail at the moment. I'll leave that to them in the film, but suffice to say, it is an amazing site that's not only great for nature, but as you'll see in the film, it's also great for our climate as well. I certainly had an amazing time when I was filming up at Benshaw. One of the highlights was waking up in the morning and a fox hunting around my car, doing that lovely pouncing thing into the grass after, I think it's after a little rodent, and also seeing the common lizards lounging in the sun, and plants like grass of Parnassus are just absolutely elegant and beautiful. So I had an amazing time up there during the filming. And the second reason I wanted to make a film about Benshaw is because of how the trust has come to have this land. It's an amazing story, an inspiring one as well, and it's thanks to you, thanks to our individual donors, thanks to local businesses, to charitable trusts, and of course our members as well. Everybody that contributed to getting us this land. So when somebody does something amazing for you, you want to say thank you. And this film is a small token of our huge thanks at Northumberland Wildlife Trust for all that all of you have done helping us get this land. So I hope you enjoy the film, and of course your visit when you do get up to Benshaw if you haven't been already. I'll leave you now with Duncan and Alice to give you a little taste and an explore around the site.
So this is Benshaw Moor, Northumberland Wildlife Trust's second largest nature reserve at 600 acres. It's a big area of heather moorland, peat bogs and other little habitats as well in amongst it. Really interesting site for its botany and its other wildlife that we see up on site here.
So we have lots of heather moorland on site, and this habitat is brilliant for reptiles like common lizards and adders, but it's also brilliant habitat for ground nesting birds including curlew and skylark. So we are on one of our peat bog habitats where you can find sphagnum mosses, cranberry, sundew. Peat bogs are really important in the fight against climate change because they help to store carbon. And here on Benshaw we have 4.5 metres of peat, which is equal to 4,500 years worth of peat formation. This is a tufa spring which has raised itself up over centuries, and where the water seeps out it creates really great habitat for a number of unusual plant species, which include broadleaf cotton grass and grass of Parnassus. So here we have limestone grassland and this stream, which supports a number of invertebrates, mammals and birds such as otter and grey wagtail.
We're doing a load of survey work at the moment on site to find out a little bit more about what we've got here. That will help guide us as to what we do in the future in terms of management. And we're going to see, I think, a few changes as we go through the next few years and see how we get on. Different grazing patterns, all sorts of things might change on here. And I think just finally, we'd like to say thank you very much to everyone, supporters and members who actually helped us buy this wonderful site in the first place.
There are 30 invasive non-native animal species that are listed as a species of concern in the UK because of their invasiveness and ability to establish successfully, often to the detriment of native species. One of these animals is the American grey squirrel, introduced into the UK in the 19th century, and it has been to the detriment of our native red squirrel. Grey squirrels compete with red squirrels for food and transmit the squirrelpox virus, which is fatal only to red squirrels. Research published in the Journal of Animal Ecology also demonstrated that the occurrence of grey squirrels cause increased chronic stress in native red squirrels, which has an impact on their ability to reproduce and thrive. Globally, invasive non-native species are one of the main drivers of biodiversity loss. They have contributed to 40% of animal extinctions that have occurred in the last 400 years. Invasive non-native species not only challenge the survival of some of our rarest species, but damage our natural ecosystems as well as costing the economy more than £1.7 billion per year. The grey squirrel remains of great concern, and it is duly included in the IUCN's international list of 100 worst invasive non-native species. Red squirrels are conversely listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List for Britain's mammals, as well as the economic impact due to grey squirrel tree damage by bark stripping, accounting for over £40 million lost for the English forest industry each year. Grey squirrels have a significant effect on biodiversity within woodlands habitats, and some species specifically affecting our native red squirrel. In the case of the red and grey squirrel struggle, it has resulted in significant range reduction of red squirrels as shown on these range maps between 1945 and the more recent maps. Northumberland Wildlife Trust has therefore been active in the struggle, alongside many others, to protect our reds for around 30 years now. The project names may have changed over the years, but we are still working hard these days as Red Squirrels Northern England, and so since 2011, in order to protect our reds. We do so alongside other local community volunteer groups that have sprung up to join the cause. RSNE's formation was a direct response of a series of government agency reviews of red squirrel conservation between 2008 and 2011. This pointed to an urgent need for annual squirrel range monitoring, a unified recording approach, and compilation of grey squirrel management, and to develop a coordinated and joined up approach to red squirrel conservation. The project strives to protect red squirrels by helping people understand why reds are under threat and why action is needed. We're also working with communities and volunteer red squirrel groups to encourage local support, involvement and conservation action. We also monitor woodlands to better understand where reds live so we can take action to conserve them. We also facilitate the management of grey squirrels in areas where reds are found in order to allow reds the space that they need to thrive. We also develop and nurture partnerships to ensure that there are a joined up approach to this work. And lastly, work with and assist land managers to access government grants to deliver environmental benefits, including red squirrel conservation. And is it worth it, you may ask? Well, considering the historical national decline and the rate of that decline, it would be reasonable to expect there to be no more reds in the north of England. However, that is not the case. Thanks to the collective effort, including around 16 local red squirrel volunteer groups across the north-east of England, the picture is much more promising, and red squirrel range is stabilising. We are holding the line, the red line. One of the real strengths of collaboration is the ability to share data and collective effort to show the bigger picture. Last year, for example, the estimated area where conservation effort was delivered in the northeast added up to around 75,000 hectares, or 750 square kilometres, and RSNE's 5 rangers and numerous contractors contributed a quarter of this area. Yet the threat and pressure of the northward march by grey squirrels remains, and we cannot become complacent. In fact, more is needed, especially in the northeast, where there are vast areas unoccupied by humans and greys can slip through the net. We are hopeful that the development of a fertility control drug will help our efforts, and we are therefore actively collaborating with scientists at the Animal and Plant Health Agency to progress this research. It will be a valuable addition to the toolbox to protect our reds. The RSNE Project Management Group consists of Forestry Commission, Red Squirrel Survival Trust, Natural England, Cumbria Northumberland Wildlife Trust and the UK Squirrel Accord. And it conveys its collective thanks to the efforts that are being made and ultimately helping to sustain red squirrels in what is still a challenging environment for us all. Without the collective effort of all involved, and especially volunteers and groups, red squirrel conservation would be under significant threat. If you would like to support the work that we do at RSNE, please consider donating to our cause or joining our Friends of the Red Squirrel membership scheme. Or if you wish to help with practical conservation, please contact us for further details.
Hello, I'm really glad you could join us today. My name's Sheila Sharp and I head up the team responsible for membership, communications and fundraising. I hope you found the presentations informative and interesting so far. I mean, they certainly represent the great variety of things that we get involved in. As you know, it's NWT's 50th anniversary year, and it represents a bit of a moment for us, and we need to reflect back on all the amazing things that have happened. That is 50 years of peatland restoration up at the Border Mires. That's 50 years of acquiring and managing nature reserves, with our latest one being the wonderful Benshaw Moor. 50 years of campaigning for protection for land and sea, with the most recent local successes against open cast mining at Druridge Bay and Julie Hill. We have run projects to secure the future for threatened species such as otters, red squirrels and lately water voles. And we actually did try and work out how many projects we have run, and it went into the thousands. We also tried to calculate how many volunteer hours we had working for nature, and that went over the million. And we've introduced hundreds of thousands of people to nature through our school programs or family events, and at our two fantastic visitor centres at Northumberland and Hawksley Wildlife Discovery Centre. But none of this would have been possible without our funders, and that's you, our donors, members, corporate members, volunteers, supporters, followers, and of course charitable trust, particularly players of the National Lottery and People's Postcode Lottery. So thank you for being there to make these things happen, and thank you for responding so generously when we've asked for your help, and thank you for caring for local wildlife in this wonderful region. Please take a mental bow, you deserve it. But we also need to refocus and motivate everyone for the future, because we've got to make some significant changes to our lives to avoid further biodiversity loss and climate breakdown. So we're kind of using the 50th anniversary to look forward, and we have some great activities for you to get involved with. 30 Days Wild is back. It's the UK's biggest nature challenge, where we're asking people to do one thing a day throughout June for their health, well-being, for wildlife and the planet. It could be anything. For example, going on a bug hunt, switching to green energy, having lunch outside, anything at all. Anyone that signs up will receive a free pack of goodies to help them plan the month, including an activity passport and a wall chart. And there are special packs for schools, care homes and businesses too, so no excuse not to take part. Last year we had a record number of people signing up, so I really want to beat that this year. So please help us and share with your networks. The sign up page is on the bottom of your screen now, and if you do anything, just put your photos or your videos online using the hashtag 30 Days Wild. There'll be lots of events of activities over the year as we come out of lockdown, so do keep checking the website for details. The address is at the bottom of your screen here, and of course we do hope to open the visitor centres, so it'll be fun. It'll be nice to get back to normal. There are other things that you can get involved in. We have various campaigns, and one that might be particularly suitable is called Then and Now. And it's really about contrasting your memories with the present. So if you'd like to send us any photos, reminiscences of videos of your favourite local beauty spots, your favourite species, or maybe some volunteering tasks that you've done, with your view on how and why you think things have changed, it would be great. Just email your ideas to the address at the bottom of the screen now. It's mail@northwt.org.uk. There will be lots of fundraising challenges as well, and one in particular I'm going to leave to our trustee Ian Jackson to introduce. It's actually our rock festival. It's not what you think. I'll let him explain. It's actually quite fun and quite different. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Demi Robinson, who's our youth worker and green mentor, to tell you about her new project. We have been talking in the trust for quite a while about incorporating different perspectives into our business strategy, and this project definitely does that and puts young people who have to live with the decisions that we take today at the forefront of leading and inspiring their own communities to make some green changes. So I'll say no more and hand you over to Demi.
Happy 50th anniversary to Northumberland Wildlife Trust. I'm Demi and I've recently joined the Trust as a Green Mentor to start a new project called the Green Influencers Scheme. The aim of this project is to recruit a new generation of young people between the ages of 10 to 14. They will meet regularly as a group and have the title of becoming Green Influencers. This means they'll share and come up with ideas for events, projects and campaigns that will help protect the environment, rebuild local communities and support nature and wildlife. They will take on a leadership role and become ambassadors for environmental social action. This means they will feel empowered to make the positive changes on the environment for our future and for future generations. This is because we all know the issues the environment's facing at the minute. These are issues such as climate change and biodiversity loss, and this project allows them to make these changes happen. We aim to make neighbourhoods within Newcastle, North Tyneside and Northumberland greener over the following years. To find out more information about the project, please go to our website and follow the Green Influencers Scheme. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ian. I'm a wildlife trustee and I'm a geologist. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of Northumberland Wildlife Trust, we'd like to show you 50 extraordinary rocky places across Northumberland. Rocks and geology play a very special role in the wildlife history and landscape of our county. Just think, without these molten rocks of the Windsill, where would Hadrian have built his wall? And there are nature reserves, where solid rocks have been bent and folded by earthquakes. We'll be revealing the real life secrets behind sites you'll know well. Kevin Costner came here as Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. But I bet you didn't know that a glacier, a kilometre high, beat him to it. And when it melted 12,000 years ago, it ripped out valleys like this one at Sycamore Gap. We'd like to take you to hard-to-find places, where you can search out the fossils of animals that lived in a warm coral sea 330 million years ago. Even though it's not as obvious anymore, we in the northeast owe an awful lot to our rocks. Coal and lead mining provided the jobs that put bread on the table for tens of thousands of families. Many of our towns and villages wouldn't exist without those rocks, and our lives would be very, very different. So I hope you'll join us in exploring Northumberland's rocky heritage. We can guarantee you'll never look at the landscape of your county in the same way again.
Well, absolutely fantastic. I think you'll agree there. Just an amazing range of projects and things going forward as well. And I'm really intrigued by Ian's invitation really to look at the whole of the ecology of our landscape, from the rocks upwards, just a fantastic thing, which I'm sure all of us will enjoy. Just before we go into the sort of 25-minute, 30-minute question and answer session, just wanted to say a few words about what we've seen tonight. The Wildlife Trust has been going and fighting for nature for 50 years, or even 60 years. And actually, we've never been needed more. And that's really the thing I want to underline. The purpose of the Trust is far from finished. We almost have a new mission because we have to even save nature and actually restore it even more than was needed when we were set up. The actual existence of the Trust as a charity was threatened this year as never before, as society and whole cultures and individuals were threatened. But I have to say that rather than being threatened in the end, we've actually thrived. We've thrived really because of our passion, our connectivity, and our relevance for now. And that's bringing new funders and people to follow us into the future, because we want to make everywhere wilder by degree, everywhere that we go, and also rewild our own lives so that we have more natural lives and more healthy lives as well as a result. And I think COVID, if nothing else, has reacquainted us with just how much we are part of nature and not separate from it, and it's reconnected people to an enthusiasm to love and enjoy nature. So we'll be building on that. The future is extremely exciting. We aim to do bigger, wilder things for people and places and for wildlife, and to help nature recover and wild everywhere. But I guess the thing I want to say before I even go into the questions, I'll probably say it again and again, is thank you. Thank you for all the volunteers, all those thousands and millions of hours, the supporters, members, the funders, trustees, people who just give of their time because they love the Wildlife Trust. They actually do love us as an organisation, but they love nature as well. And they see us as a way of ensuring that future generations will benefit from all of what nature brings, which effectively is incredible quality of life. So, you know, we are part of our own biodiversity, and we in the Trust celebrate that every day through the work that you've seen. So I just want to sort of say that as a lead-in to any, and also head off at the pass any really difficult questions, since I've given you all those thank yous and been very nice. So hopefully, in fact, bring any questions on. We're ready for anything. Okay, so over to you, really, I guess, or we'll maybe pick some questions up there in the chat.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. We do have a few questions. Thanks everybody from the teams. I've seen Katie and Hines and Duncan answering questions for people as we've gone along, actually. So thanks very much. I'm just going to unmute Duncan here as well so that he can join us.
Hello, yes.
Hello,
yes.
Duncan, can you hear me? So we've got one question already in the chat, just to kick everybody off. Perhaps if we can start with that one. The question is from Hermione Lovell, and it's: what plans does the Trust have for helping develop a landscape perspective that includes improving wildlife in domestic farms?
Well, that's a really excellent and very relevant question, because the one thing I didn't mention, and I don't think anybody else did tonight, was the fact that we are planning what we are calling a wild city or wild Tyneside project. And we see that as an urban wildlife approach, where we will engage families and people and all the green areas across the city of Newcastle and North Tyneside, but also people's gardens as well, as part of the mosaic of wildlife in the city. So trying to celebrate what's there and record what's there, because we actually don't know in many places, and to map that, and then to develop new opportunities to enhance wildlife. And a good example might be sort of hedgerow development, and alongside that hedgehogs, just a hedgehog street approaches, where we try to have more connectivity between the fragmented habitats. And of course, gardens are absolutely central to that. So yeah, we want to, wildlife gardening is really central to what we do and always has been.
Great, thank you. And we have another question from Sandra. Sandra's asking how can everybody get involved in the just to say that we will have a new webpage on the end of the site, which will give everybody information. I've got a bit of feedback on my line, but I don't know if anybody else can hear that, but sorry. Sound like a Dalek now. But there will be a web page on our website which will give you all the information, and we've got the key rock sites ready to go, so that will be on there in the next few days. I have another question in as well. Question is from Andrew: what do you see as the main challenges facing our natural environment both in the short term, say the next and the long?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? Well, and Duncan probably could answer it as well as I could. I'll have a quick stab. I would actually go, I think the biggest threat of all is people's disconnection from the natural world. And despite what I've just said, after COVID, that is still the issue. All the politicians are starting to say the right things. We're having all these pledges, but the other danger, of course, is really, will we deliver? Will they deliver? you know, because actually the window for changing things around for extinction and climate is down to about 8.5 years and counting, you know, to really make a difference going forward. So yeah, things have got to happen pretty quickly. And I think that is the biggest threat, that actually things won't happen quickly enough to ensure that we've got such biodiversity we've got now, even into the future. That's my worry. And it's a challenge, and it's one we're taking up because we're engaging many, many more people, and we're being more influential. You know, today I was in a meeting where for the first time ever, you know, there were real discussions about $500 million investment in environmental projects, and it could be even more. You know, there is a really different attitude to making nature part of the solution for climate and for extinction together. And so I see a big change around. So I'm optimistic, but it's really challenging. Don't know if Duncan wanted to say anything.
I'll just add a little bit to that. I think some of the, I think you're right. Climate change, I think, is one of the biggest challenges we face, and disconnectivity across the county, so that, you know, things are unable to make the moves and make the, you know, from one habitat to the next. You know, so as they become disconnected, you know, the chance of local extinctions becomes quite high, and we've got to be there, and we've got to be, you know, we've got to sort that out before it's too late. So that's one of the main things. I think we still have to be mindful, definitely mindful of development pressure, particularly around the southeast of Northumberland and North Tyneside, Newcastle. There's a lot of pressure on land around there, to the point of having very little, let's be honest, very little green space and open space left in North Tyneside now. It makes it really challenging to actually make, you know, some positive impacts in those areas, and that's certainly spreading into southeast Northumberland to a greater extent. So we have to do our best not to stop everything. We can't stop everything. You know, we do accept, I suppose, that houses are needed within the country, and you know, industry is needed as well. But we have to try and make the impacts as little as possible, and to try and make them positive where they can be, and to try and change the attitudes, I suppose, sometimes of the developers to try and accept that nature and is a good thing, not necessarily something that just gets in their way. And I think we're a long way from that, unfortunately, with some. Some are beginning to come on board with that. We've been working this year with building with nature as a potential scheme to try and work up that sort of thing. So hopefully schemes like that might be quite positive, have some positive impacts. But yeah, they need to be taken up, and they need to be accepted by the big players. Do you want me to carry on with the next question I noticed, which is about the DEFRA land test and trials?
Was coming to you, Duncan.
Yeah. I thought I'd just carry on with that. No, we haven't been involved with test and trials. I mean, we can't be involved in everything, unfortunately. We do our very best to be involved in as many things as we can be, but test and trials was one area that you know, we have looked at, and we've sort of looked at what that meant, but we have not engaged with that particular thing. We are aware, of course, of the DEFRA land management schemes and what may be coming out of that, and we are mindful of what that might mean for land management in the future. You know, both for our own you know, finances, as well as for, you know, the differences it might make in the farmed environment across the county. But specifically, no, not on that issue.
Thanks, Duncan. There's a question, the next question that's in is actually probably for either you or Mike, or for both of you. There's a question from Chris Myers. Hi, Chris. He's asking, what are our plans to reduce the carbon footprint for the Trust as part of initiatives across the North East and to tackling climate change?
Yeah, I can start that one off, Chris. It's obviously absolutely key that we sort of walk the talk, and we've already started to calculate our carbon footprint and do a lot of work on that, so we know what the baseline emissions of the Trust are, both domestically, if you like, but also externally. And we're starting to get to grips with that. We know what the main issues are for us. And then this year, in the next couple of months or so, we are taking forward a plan of action which will try to not just reduce our emissions to zero if we can by 2030, if not before, but actually to put carbon back into the ground and sequester carbon even more, so that nature has a gain. And so, yeah, we're part of that. And we're also, obviously, we can provide some of the nature-based solutions which might help a whole range of society and organisations actually deal with climate change. The bog work that we do on a massive scale is very much part of that, as is tree planting that we're involved in, and all of that. But that's not to get us out of jail. That's to actually provide a massive benefit for wildlife and nature across the board. We have to make sure as an organisation we budget our carbon and our emissions very carefully, and we will be doing that going forward. So yeah, it's a big part of our plans. And in fact, Trey, who you saw earlier, she's our climate ambassador. She has a meteorological background, and she's pushing for climate change changes throughout the whole of the trust. It's a cross-cutting theme in every part of our work.
I'll add a little bit on that one as well. I think, you know, we obviously have to do our own sort of things within, as Mike said, that's what you might term domestic side of things. You know, we're well aware that our vehicle fleet, for example, is old and aging. It's an expensive thing to deal with. That's one of the big problems with that. It's never been an easy solution, but we are, you know, aware of that, and we're trying to you know, improve it as we go and consider different options. You know, some of them aren't quite as, you know, we won't just be able to go to all electric vehicles, I don't think, because not yet, because, you know, some of the rural areas we get to are a little bit out of zone for that. But, you know, we're going to do our best as we replace our fleet within resources, unfortunately, we have available. It'd be great if we had a lot more, and we could go over to a much greener fleet straight away. Another element I just want to say, I think, is you know, just to add on to the peat work. It's a slightly different side of it, obviously, but we're very heavily involved in the new Northumberland Peat Partnership, which is trying to get cross-cutting to lots of different organisations within Northumberland to really try and push our peatland management, not just on our own sites, not just on the border mires, but across the board. And there is a lot of peatland out there. There's a lot of peatland that has no designation, that has no one's really even probably noticed particularly before. We've been doing some work this spring on mapping damage to some of that peatland through ditches and self-seeded trees and gullying, which is sort of semi-natural, but it's exacerbated by climate change and by burning and by all sorts of things. So, you know, we're hopefully going to do a much more coordinated effort across Northumberland, and we're quite hopeful that over the next year or so we'll have a team working on peat. As I say, right the way across, you know, from the lowland peat, what's left of the lowland peatlands, right the way up onto the sort of higher hills of Cheviot and around. So that, I think, is going to be a big change and a big new area of work for us in the next year or two.
Yeah, it's probably also important to say that we're part of very, very big partnerships across the Northeast, not least the Northeast Climate Coalition and the Vaughan Initiative, which is a community-led approach to climate change, enabling communities, which you probably do know very much about, Chris. But yeah, we're working with others because obviously we can't solve all the issues, but it's right to own our part of the problem, and that's certainly what we want to do.
Thanks, Mike. There are no further questions in here. I don't know if anybody else has got any questions. You can raise your hand or give me a wave if you don't know how to do that on Zoom. I could see Christine trying to wave, but I didn't know if she had a question or not. And Christine Hall, did you have a question, Christine, or were you just waving at the camera?
You're muted, Christine.
I'm just unmuting you. Hang on a moment.
There you are. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
you can. Yeah.
I wasn't actually waving my hand at all, but I would like to say I liked all the videos very much, and it's been very interesting. Thank you very much. If I was waving at all, I was thinking of leaving, but that's fine. I think it's just about the end anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question for Duncan. I'll put him on the spot here. Now, look, Duncan. What's the most exciting project that's coming up? Do you reckon? What's the next game changer for the trust?
Oh, wow!
Benshaw, Hawksley, squirrels. Would you not like?
Well, I think the peatland one is an exciting project. We've already talked about that. Don't need to say that one again. I think the other one we're very hopeful of is going to be, you know, some sort of more land management advice that we can give across the county. You know, working way beyond our boundaries, and working and trying to bring people together on more landscape scale conservation. We're going to see whether the local nature recovery strategy comes up with some good, you know, advice and some pointers on how to work that. And if it does, well, we might be able to start linking land together and conservation together. The very thing I said early on about sort of islands, you know, becoming detached from each other, and the danger that creates, you know, hopefully through new land management schemes and advice we can hopefully be involved with, we can make hopefully a much bigger difference across the area. And you know, it would be really nice, wouldn't it, to get another new piece of land if we could, but you know, a nice big area where we can do a lot more. Do I dare use the term wilding or on that? It'd be fantastic to have a project of that sort of basis to work on.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Duncan. I'd agree with you on that. Wouldn't it be great to see beavers back in Northumberland? You know, I see all of these species, from bison to beaver to goodness knows what, coming into Kent. We have got all the potential to be the wildest part of England, if not one of the wildest parts of Britain. And I think you're right, those sorts of projects you described are going to take us down that road. So we'll see some exciting things happen. You know, yeah.
I should just say, we're one of the projects we're working on, a small one, but is getting some habitat suitability done for beavers. So catchment suitability. So not looking at small scale any longer. I think that's been sort of decided that if new beaver introductions happen, they won't be in pens and controlled areas, that they should be on catchment basis. Now we've got a long way to go for that, an awful long way to go for that, but you know, first thing to do is to work out what the suitability of those catchments and those river systems is, and see whether there are opportunities there. And we'll only achieve that if we work with landowners and farmers and estates on those areas. They have to be on board, otherwise they won't succeed. But you know, so it's not going to happen overnight. But you know, maybe over the next year or two we'll get some progress.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Now, the other thing I've just picked up in the chat there, that June is talking about putting swift boxes up and trying to attract them to them with the calls. I mean, is the really big things, obviously it'll make massive impacts, but actually those things, like putting boxes up, like doing the right thing in your garden and stop using pesticides, and the changes we make in our own lives are also very impactful. I mean, swifts are in swift decline, and they need every bit of help that we can give them. So individual species, even numbers of species, really matter now. It's not just about biodiversity, it's about abundance as well, of course. And so if you can do something like that to really help a species that you're aware of that's suffering in your area, yeah, go ahead and do it. And if we can help, we will. Any more questions to finish us off? Literally.
I think that's about it. And I think,
yeah.
Christine's raising her hand again. She's waving again. 2 seconds. I'll just unmute you, Christine.
I am waving my hand this time, really. I just think it's a good idea, the work that's been done on the peat bogs. I think that's a good focus, and it would be a good idea if we could acquire some more land, and because Northumberland's got the wild spaces that need to be maintained and not spoilt with anything.
Can I just add as well to that? We need to keep pushing the idea that peat, we are still selling in our garden centres around northeast and further afield peat. It should not be being sold. You know, 25 years ago when I first started volunteering at the Wildlife Trust, and probably before that, we were talking about not using peat, and yet it is still available in our garden centres, and peat free is less available than peat often, and it's outrageous that we're still selling that, and that's another area we really need to be pushing on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't mentioned the marine environment, and we've got some big challenges there as well. And you know, we might talk about, you know, how we encourage alternative energy in the North Sea, but how do we also keep our seabird populations and porpoises the next time we speak? So much to cover, but I wanted just to thank everybody for tonight. It's been brilliant, and from the chat I can see people have enjoyed it. So I'll just pass back to you, Liz, just to wind us up finally and technically.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody. It was really just to say to everyone, thanks ever so much for joining us tonight. And hopefully the next time we arrange something like this, it may be an in-person event. Hopefully, if things continue the way they are, we don't have to continue with this strange online format for hopefully that much longer. So thank you very much. Keep watching the Wildlife Trust website. We'll be putting details of any of the 50th anniversary celebration activities on tomorrow, actually, and then the Rock Festival site will be live as well. So you can go in there and explore which of the fantastic rocks you can find in our region. But thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Hopefully see you again soon.